Hi, today I'm going to show you how my new plugin ObjectMaster works. So ObjectMaster lives in this little toolbar here. You can find it in Window ObjectMaster. It will show up here. I find it docks nicely to the left side of your screen if you just want to drag it over there. You can also access all of the ObjectMaster commands in this menu here inside the Edit menu. So whichever place you prefer. I greatly prefer the toolbar, but I know some people don't have a lot of screen space, so you can use the menu if you like. So what is here? Well, there's a lot of different categories here. We've got some general tools, some clipboard, and even some access to tools that are already built into Unity, but a little bit hard to get at. So saving and loading selections, for example, is in here. The intended use of ObjectMaster is to allow level designers and people working with a lot of objects, especially in a 3D space, to be able to arrange them very, very quickly and make changes to them en masse. So we'll get right to it. I'll show you how to arrange a bunch of objects with this. So I'm going to start off with just a ground plane. One thing that I find a little bit annoying sometimes is when I create new objects in Unity, they tend to be created at my camera view instead of the world origin, so I find myself doing this a lot. I'm sure you're in the same boat. So if you don't want to have to do that all the time, I've got this button here called 0 for you. So most of these buttons here will only apply to one, can apply to one or more channels. So right now you can see I'm set to transform. So zeroing will zero out my transform. It'll reset it to default. So it just reset everything to 0 for position and rotation and 1 for scale. If I wanted, I could set just the position to 0, just the rotation to 0, or just the scale to 0 with this. And other tools will also use this filter. I'll just leave it on transform for now. So I'm going to use this as my ground plane. I'll just leave it there. And I've got a lot of props thanks to John here. I'm going to drag them directly into my scene and start working with them. So I'll drag them right into my scene here. I'll drag all of them in. There we go. So I got a handful of props. If I really want to populate this environment, it might take a while to distribute these all into random positions on their own. So where the toolkit comes in there is with my scatter function. So I'm going to duplicate these a couple times just so I got more to work with. And so I'm not accidentally selecting my camera, light, plane, whatever. I'll just select the objects I want to work with, and I'll use Control G, which is the group button here. Finally, Control G inside Unity to put them all inside a group. So I'll just call this props. So now with everything inside props selected, I can use this scatter function here. So scatter uses a radius and some kind of scattering. So I'm going to use circle by default. I'm going to scatter everything within 5 units. So it's a 5-meter circle that this will scatter them all in. So this gives random positions to everything. If I want to go smaller, I can just turn down my radius, scatter in a smaller radius. And I can also choose other shapes. So I can scatter into square, which might suit this better. So maybe I'll do a 5-unit square. Move everything a little back to center here. And I've got my props covering that much area pretty quickly. I'll duplicate them once more just because they're looking a little sparse. And try scattering them a bit again. That radius is a bit high. There we go. Alright, so very quickly we've got random positions for everything here. It makes it a little bit quicker to put everything together. I could be a little bit more random with this still. If you notice, nothing has changed rotation. A lot of these objects are all facing the same way, which makes them look like they're repeating. Makes it a lot more obvious that we're kind of reusing this. So I'm going to use some randomized tools on this. I'll just use the y-axis and randomize the rotation on that. I could rotate on all axes, but I find that's not the best result. If I was doing kind of like a sunken city thing, this might be appropriate, but some objects turn upside down. I'd recommend if you're just doing rocks or something that no one's really going to notice if they're upside down, I'd probably use all axes, but I recommend just Y for most cases, especially structures. So now everything's rotated in a bit of a random direction. I find that looks a little bit nicer. We can also randomize the scale. So the default scale I've given you here is between 0.5 and 2. Let's try that out. Okay, so that's jumbling around the scale a little bit. That's pretty good. I'm going to go a little bit more subtle. I'm going to go between 0.8 and 1.3. There we go. So we got a bit more randomized happening here too. I'm going to add some colliders to these objects, and they're going to allow us to do a little bit more. So I'll just add a regular box collider to these. Box colliders tend to fit nicely. And with these box colliders on them now, I can use this buddy system here. So what buddy is going to do is it's going to look for neighbors within the radius. So the radius is 10 here. So anything within 10 units, it's going to try to jump right next to. So use the buddy system, and you'll see some of these objects are kind of clustering together now. Instead of just being a random, completely disconnected distribution, you get things actually clumping up. So I can click this again and again and get even more buddying happening as well. So really all these are doing is they're just expanding outwards in a radius of 10, looking for the nearest object, trying to get close to that object without overlapping the colliders. So there we go. We've got this pretty quickly set out. But let's say we don't want to work with a flat ground. Let's say we want to use a terrain. It's a little big. I'll make it smaller. Smaller still. Let's make a tiny terrain here. Okay, so I'll move that back to center here. We'll give it a little bit of sculpting, so won't do anything fancy here. Just a bit of just some hills. Make it a bit random. Okay, so if anyone's ever placed objects on terrain before, will agree it takes a long time to position these things. Getting objects to just sit in the ground and not allowing them to pass through the ground but not looking like they're floating above the ground can take quite a bit of time. I don't seem to have a very good there we go. That's not the best, but we'll work with it. So we don't want our objects falling through the floor, but we don't want them positioned on the floor. So I can select all my props here, raise them up into the sky, and I've built this ground feature here. So you can click ground, and what this will do is this will slam them down on whatever ground they find, which works great with terrain, works great with any kind of collider. Your objects themselves don't need to have a collider to use this. So if they do have a collider, they'll slam to the bottom of that collider. If they don't have a collider, they'll slam down based on their pivot to whatever's below them. Sometimes you'll get objects like this that fall onto other objects. You can just select them again and ground them again. The other tools here, hopefully are pretty self-explanatory. We all use F a lot to select an object and then zip our camera over to it. I find a lot of the time I need to bring an object to my camera as opposed to my camera to an object. So with this object selected, I can come over here, click on bring near, and bring near is basically just reverse find. I find that's a bit of a time saver in certain situations. There you go. So everything's near to my camera now. Cool. I'll let you play with the rest of this here. You can disable and enable warnings, so you can see some of these warnings. Oh, ignore those failed to create device file things. If there's no ground for certain objects to drop to, it'll give you a little warning about it. None of these are really a huge issue, just tools when they fail to execute exactly how they're supposed to. They'll give you a little message about it. So there you go. The buddy wasn't able to find a buddy for those objects. If you don't want to see those, you can just click on disable and you won't see those messages anymore. A couple more things about the scatter. If I want to select all these objects once more, I can scatter into a sphere. So for 3D space, go up in the sky so we can see a little better. So we get some height in there. Or we can scatter into a cube. Get a nice big radius in there. So try it out, play with it, let me know what you think. Love to hear your feedback. I hope you enjoy using it.